Good afternoon and welcome to today's session, the IIoT Ready PLC, Your Journey from the Edge to the Cloud. My name is Natalie Meeker, and along with my colleague Dan Freeve, we will be your moderators for today's webinar. Before we get started, if you have any questions during the presentation, please post them in the Q&A section to the right of the screen, and we will answer them during the presentation or during the Q&A segment at the end of the presentation. I know we are all very excited to hear from today's presenter, Patrick Corcoran. Patrick is a project director for DMC with over a decade of industry experience. Patrick's software career has emphasized data collection and integration with physical systems. As IoT and IIoT solutions continue to change the industrial landscape, Patrick's broad experience in device platforms and data-driven applications support his unique insight into solution readiness, which drive investment decisions and deployment strategy. I'd like to pass it over now to Patrick to take us on this journey from the edge to the cloud.
Thank you, Natalie, and welcome in to everyone who's joining us this afternoon. We are excited that you're here, and I hope that everybody has had a great week, is staying safe and healthy, and looking forward to the coming weekend. As Natalie mentioned, we're all here today to talk about a topic that's really exciting for DMC and for a lot of the things that are going on. So with my voice and the tiny version of myself, again, I welcome you in, and I'm excited to be taking us on this journey from the edge to the cloud. Again, hello, I'm Patrick. I've been with DMC over 8 years, and the last couple of years really focused intently on the IoT and IIoT application space within DMC service offerings. For those of you that are new or don't know DMC very well, to give you a sense of what we do and who we are a custom software and systems integration group with a number of direct specialties and platform expertise, ranging from manufacturing automation, embedded development systems, digital workplace solutions, test and measurement applications, and more traditional web and desktop application development. What's really exciting for us when it comes to the IoT and particularly the IIoT is that we feel very well positioned to help serve our customers and clients from the factory floor all the way to the curated web and high value user experiences that we can deploy within these applications. And we're going to explore just what that means today as we look into these different technologies and solutions that we can provide. It's been a privilege to be in business over 20 years. We've worked with a very large number of clients on an array of projects with deployments across the world. And again, as the IoT and IIoT space continues to evolve, more and more we are seeing the need for kind of these extended geographic reach and global type deployments. DMC has been doing this for a number of years and is excited to be here to help today. We've grown as a company to help our clients across the US. We are now over 180 employees with engineers serving clients coast to coast. So wherever you are, wherever you may be, we would hope to have a team that is ready and willing to help out with a multitude of application needs. I want to say a special thank you to the Siemens team that helped promote this event today and underscore our strong partnership with the Siemens community. We're proud to have the largest number of certified Siemens engineers in the US across the variety of product offerings that Siemens has. Most notably to the IoT space, DMC is also a supporting MindSphere solution partner. And we're going to look at least one case study here today, talking about MindSphere and an integration success story with that platform. So again, welcome to all of you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to spend some time with us and to talk about the IIoT. It's a huge space and certainly a hugely popular topic to talk about within industry as we look at the different applications and possibilities for our machines and connected systems. So to take you through kind of the plan for today's discussion, we're going to start off with at least setting a little bit of boundary about what is the IIoT? What does that mean to us, and why is it important to kind of set some definitions and get our footing in this world? I think a lot of buzzwords about Industry 4.0 and digital factory, digitalization. These are things we hear about very frequently now, but often we don't really take the moment to define what we're talking about. We're going to do that here right off the top. Most importantly, why are any of us listening to this call? What is the point of investing, of taking a step in this journey with cloud connected applications? We're going to explore kind of the reasons why, the benefits that drive these sorts of investment decisions, and take a look at case studies, some specific case studies to understand how some of our customers have been able to capitalize on these technologies. I think underscoring this entire discussion in connecting industrial systems to the cloud, we're going to take a look and explore kind of the state of the industry and what we expect when we connect these industrial devices to our off-premise or server-based solutions. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit today about kind of how to right ourselves within the myriad of options that we have in choosing the right solution for our business or our type of process and operation. So again, thank you for spending the time. We're going to get started right here with what is the IIoT. And I think it's a little bit important to take a minute to kind of explore the history of the Internet of Things and how this word even became commonplace language for us. Really, the Internet of Things, the concept of connecting anything to a interconnected network that many different people could have access to, started in the early 80s, right in conjunction with the beginnings of research on the internet. A research team at Carnegie Mellon connected the first Coca-Cola vending machine to the internet and was serving their caffeine needs there ever since. About every 10 years, we see kind of a new milestone occur within this IoT, within the IIoT space. I expect will follow a very similar cadence to what we see. And about 10 years later is what I like to call the toaster tipping point. It is really when we started to see at least the first semblance of consumer electronics being connected and controlled to the internet. And for those of you that are kind of computer nerds that like to go search and review some of the history of the internet and computing devices, you can find today that inside the standard spec for HTTP technology, there is a full definition on how to make coffee through the internet. That is a very real thing. I'd encourage you to check it out. Wikipedia will certainly oblige. But the word IoT and IoT is actually born into existence right at the turn of the century, which doesn't mean what it used to, at least in my lifetime. 1999, Kevin Ashton, a professor of MIT and later P&G of fame, spending lots of time with RFID tracking and logistics management with things within industrial environments, kind of predicted and sort of foretold the concept that the networks and internets and interconnectivity that surrounds us in this world would be built for things as opposed to people. This is no longer a person sitting in a terminal communicating point to point with one another, but rather we have sensors, intelligent devices, business logic, and pieces of software utilizing this infrastructure to improve efficiency and automate our daily lives. So his term was Internet for Things, which actually really resonates with me. Marketing minds prevailed, which sort of morphed this concept to the Internet of Things. And in 2008, that really became true, where the rise of smartphones, the interconnectivity of devices that we see throughout our lives, from Wi-Fi based laptops to now what is becoming commonplace with home automation devices, Google Home, streaming devices, Rings, Nest doorbell systems. These things came onto the internet and now are more prevalent in the ways that they connect than there are people on planet Earth. So if you're a Terminator fan or worried about the machines taking over, it happened over 12 years ago now. So I don't mean to cause the alarm, but we're already there. we already are kind of living in this world of Internet of Things. And that brings me to kind of the discussion here today as we translate and sort of think about the industrial place in all of this and what we've come to expect as engineers, as system designers, as solution providers in 2020. Our expectations have fundamentally changed for what we mean when it comes to remote connectivity and access on our mobile devices directly in our hand and accessible throughout the world. Many of you are probably familiar with the Rogers Bell Curve. This is something that was, and for those that aren't, this is a definition for sort of how we see technology evolving within a marketplace or adoption within a group of people. And as I mentioned, for those of you, if the moderators could help me out here, for those of you following along, we're going to post a quick question in the chat. How many of you within your homes, within your daily lives are currently using something that would be considered Internet of Things? This could be a smartwatch. This could be a washing machine connected to Wi-Fi, your garage door. I mentioned the Google products, Nest. We are seeing in the consumer space, the speed of adoption and advancement into these technologies is a core requirement for new product introduction. We expect that almost anything that has any sort of electronics associated with it that's going to touch our daily lives has a mobile and web experience associated with that is curated and reaches our audience. And for that reason, I would say if we're talking purely about consumer electronics, we're talking about an adoption situation where it is now the late majority. Folks are playing catch up to continue to augment products, to differentiate products within this space, because so many of these gadgets, gizmos, and otherwise are coming to market already connected, already baked in with these mobile and web experiences to make it as convenient as possible for users to interact and latch on to the product family. I think unsurprisingly, if I were to place the IIoT, the Industrial Internet of Things, on this curve, we would be still in the early adoption stage of this. And I don't think that's a surprise to anyone here. And that's okay too. With the industrial world, as we all know, we have an expectation for performance of technologies and devices that far exceeds that within our consumer lives. Most systems within industry are expected to last a minimum of 20, 30, 40. Some of you are probably laughing because you work on systems that are 50, 60, 80 years old and still churning out high quality products within your business and throughout the world. The risk to sort of adopting and failing with technologies is significantly higher within industry. The capital expenditures and the amount of time that we need to develop these applications is quite a bit longer. What I'm here to say today, and I think the message that underscores where we are in the state of the world with the IIoT, we have over 40 years now of the experience of the technology advancement that have been going on within the consumer space and driving forward this mechanism and sort of shifting our expectations. And now is a very good time to be seriously considering the investment. We're going to talk about some of the platforms and things that underscore these decisions and reduce the risk, reduce the time, and can quickly get us ramped up into the world of the Internet of Things. So at the end of the day, what do we mean? We mean we're connecting our industrial controllers, our PLC systems, sometimes our HMI devices, drives, SCADA packages. We're connecting our industrial electronics hardware to the cloud. And this isn't just the cloud in terms of a kind of strange looking icon that we often see in brochures. What we're talking about is some actual platform technologies, something like MindSphere that offers a cloud-based operating system for onboarding devices, data, and providing analytics services. But maybe broader reaching than that, and something that we start to see within our business spaces and within our daily lives in terms of how we interact with websites and the things around us, are very large cloud providers, Azure, AWS, Google, IBM, Oracle, just to name a few, are sort of leading the transformation in how we approach technology and package services. And with the industrial Internet of Things, we can take advantage of the fact that the investments being made in this space are creating an ecosystem of platforms and services for both data management, storage, analytics, visualization tools that significantly advance our ability to sort of sense, digest, and act on information within our industrial systems. This is a very exciting kind of component and time for all of us to be evaluating and looking at solutions in this area. So to underscore this point of why is this important to us? Why do we care about adopting this information, and what does it sort of mean to our business? I would submit a few things that we should be considering when we're looking at advancing technology and adopting cloud-based solutions into our industrial systems and into the world around us. The first is, do we have a quantifiable cost to our current mode of operation? I think in large part, we're so used to the situation where industrial systems are sort of on an island. We have to physically go, touch, feel, and interact with these devices that we forget that the travel associated with that, the access to those locations, the time commitments that we make to sort of manage that relationship with the equipment is significantly high. And making systems that are better connected, more conveniently accessed, and I would even submit secured in such a way that we can feel comfortable with those tools being in operation can offer a significant opportunity to save costs in our support models, in our operations day to day. Cloud-based services and the ability to reach out beyond just a very specific system or application in a very specific location means that for people that are designing systems and services, the OEM community comes to mind very strongly here, are always continuing to look for value-added services. This is something that's very successful within maintenance programs, preventive maintenance programs that go on, but how can we add a web-connected component to that? How can we make the process of requesting services and performing services easier? These are the types of solutions that have sort of been pioneered and pushed forward within the consumer cloud that we see a lot of success with these models that have been sort of slowly adopted within industry. I'd submit for additional consideration for your organizational needs, cloud-based solutions can very much help start to pave the way for better IT and OT automation. I think for a long time, we've been talking about the different interplays, different connectivities between things like MES systems and ERP systems. And I think as we look at cloud-based solutions for those types of applications in conjunction with the SCADA systems and control systems that are on our plant and factory floors, we're starting to see infrastructure that is more similar than not. And this offers significant opportunity in application design to smooth out maybe some of the rough edges that we see within the industrial space. And I think maybe most importantly, to looking ahead and differentiating products and services as market leading is that we want to meet customers, clients, end users where they like to be. And I think it's undoubted that we've all heard that people like to use their tablets, their mobile devices. These web experiences are highly curated, highly customized, and well suited to our base expectations today. I don't think anymore any of us like to export a CSV file so that we can manually manipulate Excel. There are very awesome reporting tools available to us digitally on the web, even mobilely, that we can gain access to, and we can start to streamline our own process in the way that we look at these applications. I think if we shift to sort of technical features and start to stand this up against some case studies and some success stories that businesses have had deploying IIoT solutions, I'd start with sort of the quintessential requirements that really typically launch these applications forward and are sort of base expectations as we look at a cloud-based solution. And I'd start by submitting remote monitoring and control in conjunction with push notification support. This could be email or text alerts. These are things that we expect from web-based systems, from mobile-based solutions. This is the reason, at least the entry point, why we want to step into the world of IIoT. And I think what DMC would submit as a quintessential example of that is a partnership and project we worked on with a company called AgriInject. They develop nutrient and fertilizer pump injection systems that serve the agricultural community, and they were able to sort of put together a model that is a quintessential IIoT example that offers easier maintenance and troubleshooting for their clients, providing that web and mobile experience, enhanced ease of use over maybe even on-premise support of these types of industrial systems, and added alarm notifications and text message support for systems that are not readily accessible. I think we could appreciate within the agricultural world that the types of geolocation challenges that we face are maybe rivaled only by our friends in oil and gas. We talk about miles and many hours between some of the assets that we see in the field. And one of the key components that the cloud combined with cellular technology has allowed us to sort of bridge that gap and bring some of the challenges of converting these systems, of tuning, of calibrating, of managing consumable delivery. We can bring that into the palm of your hand, into the comfort of your home, and significantly differentiates this product among its peers that maybe require a literal physical wrench to change or adjust settings on the fly in the field. This is a great example of how we can harness the power of the web to directly interact with devices and components. Furthermore, we can add a great user experience for monitoring alarms, status, and provide very simple based controls. This combined with historical data, this is all possible because of this ecosystem of industrial controller and cloud-driven technology. We're kind of putting all of these pieces together to offer a highly convenient, a highly tailored, a highly flexible solution to the AgriInject clients. And I think a question we get a lot, and especially when it comes to the IIoT in particular, I'm here to say it's a resounding yes that the control piece is not left out of this picture. And that's one of the things we talk to our clients and customers about, and was especially prevalent within this particular project, is that this system has to be a two-way street. And while collecting lots and lots of data is extremely important for a lot of different reasons, the ability to take action on this information is often in the industrial space the fundamental component that can make the project worthwhile or can bring ROI to the system, which is that we can take the appropriate step, take the appropriate action to improve our output, to improve our production, or to recover a system or service that we're looking at. If we look at additional technology benefits that we get from cloud-based solutions when we talk about bringing these different control concepts and things together, real-time information, service optimization, customer experience, these are all things that we can very tightly curate within cloud-based solutions. And I'd like to take us all on the journey here with another case study into the magical world of waste management. Now, I would argue that trash is not something any of us ever like thinking about. In fact, The only time we think about trash is typically when it's a problem. And what's really interesting about this company in the waste management space is they were able to take that user experience, that understanding of frustration when there's overflowing garbage just prevalent in our lives, which is the number one service complaint any waste management company will face. And they were able to say, how can we leverage industrial technologies, modern cloud solutions to both improve our business performance and the user experience simultaneously? So in this particular application with their trash compactors, we were able to deploy an industrial control system, Siemens PLC system, reporting to a cloud-hosted service that enables us to monitor the performance health and do predictive maintenance on the compaction unit. We're able to derive significant cost savings because of service optimizations. We can now change from a polling model or polling schedule model where trucks and services are dispatched at a constant regular interval to an on-demand model, meaning clients that need additional pickups can receive that information, as well as clients that need to go longer between service efforts can take advantage of additional dwell time. This improves fleet management, this improves operational costs, and this fundamentally underscores how they were able to tie this all together using a web-connected system in the industrial Internet of Things. An additional point to pushing this information within the web, and something that is true kind of across the board as we look at applications like this, is that the companies that are leading the way in terms of cloud adoption, cloud footprints, cloud infrastructure, we talk about the Microsofts, the Googles, the IBMs, the Amazons. Their sort of vision for these services, they think on a scale that is significantly larger than maybe is required for success. And what's very cool about something like this is whether we scale from a single compaction unit to hundreds or thousands of compaction units, we're still talking about a small footprint realistically when it comes to servers, when it comes to infrastructure and architecture. We have a huge amount of flexibility to scale solutions of all sorts of shapes and sizes. This is all underscored by, again, the finer point that we can very well curate that user experience and that ability of the service operators to manage how they interact with the equipment in the field day to day and understand how the equipment is performing. So again, we're taking advantage of sort of these modern web technologies to improve the experience and to, again, meet those hefty expectations that we all have for convenience and managing this information. Now, it's not always that we have the ability within the industrial space. I mentioned sort of the lifetime of industrial applications. We understand that something may be 10, 15, 20 years old and barely even approaching its halfway point in terms of service life. And what do we do with this in terms of the infrastructure we've already invested in, the applications that we have that still have what we'd call legacy systems? Are those things just completely left behind? And I would say that the answer to that is no. And I think in conjunction with a few different technologies, we can show that very successfully we can come in and connect a highly diverse group of electronic devices and manage them under a cohesive cloud experience. So as another example of some work that DMC was able to partner and perform with our clients, we worked with a high volume manufacturer. They were maintaining over 36 different production lines of different age and vintage. And in using a combination of SCADA approach for some of the protocol translation and reaching all of the different devices that were out there in the field, as well as sort of the size and sophistication of a platform like MindSphere, we were able to deploy an essentially no-code solution to onboarding those legacy devices and deploying that information within the cloud ecosystem. So primarily when we come to those types of applications, those higher volume control, higher diversity applications, it sort of represents the other end of the spectrum from a product development or product introduction, where we have a few different things that we care about. One of which is, what's this going to mean in terms of process interruption? How efficiently can we get this deployed and up and running and started? Is it cost effective to do for my particular system? How am I looking at ROI? And in this case, we may be looking at cost savings, per unit cost savings, or how we're driving cost savings within our processes. And additionally, how flexible is this to my expanded set of needs? We need to be considering applications and deployments that give us enough range of flexibility to onboard additional equipment, onboard additional lines, and scale with the need. This is sort of a different type of scalability, a different type of flexibility that I was talking about with our waste management solution, or even with our pump solution, where we're talking about maybe the total number of devices scaling up. In this particular case, we're discussing kind of this scale out across a variety of devices. And I think kind of those two comparisons really represent the different types, two ends of the spectrum in terms of the types of IIoT applications that we look at. I'll just take a pause here to the moderators, Dan or Natalie, to ask, just to take a look at the audience questions. Did we have any questions kind of regarding looking at what these technologies mean, or why we would want to look at this, at these applications in this space?
Absolutely. Patrick, we just have one question I'm hoping you can answer. It was, has DMC had experience deploying applications with other package solutions like Node-RED or ThingsBoard?
Sure. So I gave an example just now of kind of a MindSphere SCADA combination and marriage, but absolutely. So a couple of the case studies we're showing here today were a selected group that we wanted to sort of compare and contrast these two sort of different approaches in product design, industrial product design, as well as industrial process monitoring. Node-RED and ThingsBoard are great platforms. There's something we're familiar with. Kind of in both cases, we've used them very successfully to prototype solutions, to develop requirements for a more curated user experience. They're very quick to get started and offer a lot of good ways for you to kind of onboard and test this mechanism. So I'd highly recommend exploring them right at the beginning of these journeys, where you're still trying to understand sort of the size and shape of information you're trying to collect. So they're very neat platforms. And again, kind of one of the components that's out in the marketplace that we can take advantage of as industrial clients. Some of these things were derived from consumer electronics concepts that have morphed and evolved a little bit and focused more on industrial end use cases. So I hope that answers the question for the audience there. But we're certainly happy to talk about applications kind of in a wide range of products and platforms. I think that sort of also feeds a little bit, at least, to transitioning to what sort of underscores and is needed to get started with this process. Ultimately, we need to have a way to connect our devices to these cloud-based services. So we'll kind of revisit our picture here again of how do we actually manage to get the information from the factory floor to the cloud, and how do we do it in a secure and manageable way? I'd like to introduce here, at least today, and at least just touch on the surface of this particular topic. Some of you may have heard of the acronym MQTT. It's a popular thing that kind of goes hand in hand with IoT discussions that we see. MQTT is a protocol. It was actually introduced about 20 years ago, and it is a communications mechanism that allows us to very efficiently package and send data over the network. The great part about MQTT, again, designed from the get-go for the Internet of Things, it was designed for very resource-constrained systems. It's designed for network bandwidth restriction, meaning it's well suited to cellular needs. And it has become the pervasive technology that's been adopted amongst the major cloud players for sending and receiving data to subscriber devices. And what's even more exciting still, especially within the Siemens ecosystem and some of the success stories that we've shown here today, is this is a natively supported framework for our industrial devices that we can get access to right away. You can ask any one of my DMC colleagues, moderators, or otherwise. I would love to dive into another hour-long discussion on the technical specifics of MQTT and how that works. In fact, we sort of already did. We have a nice web series ahead in the clouds. We did a live TIA demo of how to get started with this. I encourage you to check it out. But ultimately, what we're showing is we can reduce the time to market, the speed of deploying these types of applications within the Siemens ecosystem to a matter of minutes, and take advantage of a standard and widely adopted set of protocols. I think I mentioned, at least very briefly, security is sort of a question that is always at the heart of this discussion and something that we always need to take a moment to consider, especially when we're talking about devices out to the wide world of the internet. What's really awesome about MQTT on these platforms is that we can take advantage of TLS encryption, and we can deploy modern encrypted secure messaging standards that are in line with what we expect anytime we visit a website, as strong of encryption as we can expect on the web, period, like with your bank or otherwise. So we're furthermore kind of doubling down on taking advantage of the advancements in security and encryption that have gone on within web technologies. We're deploying those same concepts right at the industrial edge and getting our devices efficiently and securely connected to cloud applications. So MQTT kind of sits at the heart and underscores everything that we're doing with collecting, sending, and receiving information from the industrial edge to the cloud. So through our case study examples, we saw that there's kind of a couple of roads that we can walk. There are package solutions. The questions mentioned things like Node-RED or ThingsBoard. There's package solutions like MindSphere and others. Conversely, we contrast that with maybe some more customized solutions like we saw with our waste management example and our Agri-Inject pump deployment. So how do we kind of right ourselves in terms of what's the right way to go about investing or sort of crafting my plan for the IIoT solution within my business? And again, to underscore that, I think that there's sort of two different ends of the spectrum and a lot of things that are probably somewhere in the middle. But on one hand, we have applications and solutions that have requirements for high diversity. This is things that we saw in that example of 36 different manufacturing lines that's going to have equipment of all sorts of shapes and sizes and ages and manufacturers. We have high diversity applications. On the other hand, we have high specialization applications. This is going to be things that are more a uniform fleet, perhaps things we're going through kind of a product introduction on. and we're hoping to scale. These are applications where our expectations and how we kind of curate that user experience are going to be a little bit different. But these are sort of the two waypoints on either end of the spectrum when we architect an IIoT solution. And let's take a look at some of the pros and cons of or compare contrast of some of the finer points of these things. The first I would say is we need considerations for the number of devices, the size of the fleet, the shape of the data that we're interested in collecting. What's really great news about kind of regardless of which option that we choose is, like I said, the cloud systems of today, they think in terms of millions, hundreds of millions of connected devices or interconnected components. When we talk about industrial applications, we really often don't have volume that pushes that level of complexity. So when it comes to the readiness of the cloud to accept the data that we're interested in sending, to onboard the number of devices that we might hope within our wildest dreams our products and services will scale to, we are by and large actually using a smaller end of the pond than what we maybe see with consumer electronics. Again, compare something like the number of cell phones that exist in the world to the number of trash compactors that might ever be deployed. So those are two completely different orders of magnitude. And again, the cloud is well suited to handle even the largest industrial version of an application. I think the next thing we need to consider is sort of our startup connectivity and what is the user experience around onboarding a new device and expanding the fleet and interacting with these things. When we compare kind of that experience within a package solution to a custom developed application, the package solution is going to have a little bit higher complexity. This is because it has to cover more use cases, more considerations when it comes to different device manufacturers, different products. Sort of that diversity of components is going to mean that the setup process and the onboarding process takes an extra minute to get that right and to get those devices reporting in. Conversely, when we talk about a curated and custom solution, we can make sure that that process is fully optimized and meets our end user at the right level of complexity. This is both to ensure security, but also to ensure a good user experience that when they buy a new product, for example, it's very easy to set up, start up, and get moving in the right direction. Similarly, I think we want to think about the communication pathways that we have within our application. And with those high diversity components, you saw in our example, we used WinCCOA as sort of an intermediary to be able to support many different protocols and sort of aggregate and forward that data within the MindSphere ecosystem. Conversely, on a custom solution, we're going to have tighter control and we're going to be more selective about how many different things we implement to talk to. Now, what's really cool about MQTT and sort of what I introduced with that as a fundamental piece of this architecture is that there's such wide adoption within the marketplace that even if you do choose to only support MQTT, for example, that's going to allow you to reach a very wide audience and connect a large number of devices within your solution. So it's something to keep in mind. This is probably mostly relevant, again, if you're in that high diversity situation with mixed vendors, with mixed ages. When you're in a custom solution scenario, you have significantly tight controls on how and when you're going to interact with the devices within this cloud. Analytics is another topic that comes up all the time with the IIoT, because what are we doing with the data? How are we interacting with the data once we actually get it up into the cloud? And this can range from things as simple as, basic graphs, line graphs, bar charts, things like that, to very advanced AI packages. When we're talking about graphs and charts, all solutions across the board are very straightforward. I think when I hear about analytics and sort of the excitement about the cloud, that this is often paired with AI and machine learning. In kind of both ends of this spectrum, you're going to be talking about significant investment in doing that. So usually the guidance we give, especially in comparing these packages, is that is typically a phase 2 decision that we make. Often we need to focus intently first on getting the information, the important information that we need to analyze and that supports our business. We need to get that to our cloud solution first, and the analytics package, the modeling, the prediction type algorithms, those are things that we can deploy. We can deploy in an expanded set of scope, an expanded set of phase. This is often not something that drives the decision on the front end of these solutions. What's great about the cloud and how we approach the data storage here is that in both cases, we'd be advocating for data systems and historical information that is highly flexible to be consumed by reporting engines, by analytics packages, by AI models. These are all the cloud is affording us significant flexibility and significantly advanced computing capability to consume this information on the back end. User experience is a huge part of that. I've talked about our shifting expectations from the beginning of this presentation today, and probably the number one thing that moving to a modern web-connected system does is gives us the ability to have that app experience, that mobile experience, to utilize the modern UI and development practices to make our technology look cool. I mean, this is something that sounds silly to say out loud, but often I'm sure you've all seen in your own lives when software isn't fun to use, it's used incorrectly, or we're not engaged in the task at hand. And I think no better example of this sort of challenging us is happening today in industry. If we look at sort of how operators are trained to use HMIs, I would say probably all of us can think about services and systems where there's one very specific person who spent years becoming the expert in how to click on a particular piece of software. And I would challenge to say that if we had a better user experience, if we could have had a better user experience, could we have made that system more engaging to more people and made our business resumption, made our training process, made the investment to operate equipment like that significantly better? When we compare both packaged web solutions and custom web solutions, we're really talking about the spectrum of good to great. The packaged solutions, they're going to have really, they're going to have as streamlined as possible of user experiences. Custom solutions are going to be tailored and purpose-built, and they're going to follow the modern best practices for engaging and maintaining the end user in whatever application that we're talking about. And I think probably the moment you've all been waiting for, at least for me to say out loud to solidify it in your mind, is how do we kind of look at the pricing of these different types of solutions? And I think there's kind of two phases that we need to look at these applications in and understand sort of what drives the cost of deployment for an IIoT application. Within a packaged solution, upfront development is very low. We discussed with at least our case study 36 different manufacturing lines. That was a no-code solution to tapping into tags and information on the plant floor and getting it up into the cloud. This made the upfront investments, the energy that it takes to set up that solution, very, very low. Now we're going to make a trade in terms of the recurring cost for packaged solutions. Those solutions are going to have a value proposition, and the proprietors of those solutions are certainly going to build that build that argument, build that case, and their cost model is going to be built on the recurring side of this investment. So while we have low upfront, low onboarding solutions, we're going to have a high recurring cost that we need to contend with. Conversely, with a custom solution, we're going to have the polar opposite. We're going to have to spend a lot of time developing, managing, and curating the custom approach and the user experience we want to form for our applications. And we are going to be rewarded in a sense with the fact that we have much tighter control of how the deployment looks and acts, and we can manage and maintain a low recurring cost model for these types of applications. If we bring it all together, and I know this is hard to look at, and wanted to give this snapshot here, and at least for the recording, if anyone visits this on the back end, but we can kind of put all of these things together side by side, and we can start to sort of orient ourselves of where we are within this spectrum. And again, we're going to run into middle ground applications that are going to kind of toe the line between both ends of this, and it's going to take a little bit of focus and mental energy to kind of unpack and understand where the application fits, what the needs of the business are, and how we can most successfully go about tackling these solutions for our industrial systems. So where can we go from here? This is all to say DMC is here to help. We love talking about the industrial applications. We love the IIoT, the IoT. We've been spending a lot of time with our clients and customers deploying a variety of different solutions, from the package spectrum to the fully custom spectrum and a few things in between. I'm so glad you could spend some time with me here today, and do appreciate you sticking with me throughout this presentation. If you'd like to learn a little bit more, get a little bit more information, if you're just at the beginning of your journey, if you're engaging with clients that are talking about solutions with this, if you'd simply like to kind of unpack it a little bit deeper layer, this web series just sort of gives you a taste, scratches the surface of the applications that we're deploying, of the protocols and technical features that we're using, and how we sort of approach the decision-making process. But we have more info for you here. One is a nice guided blog series on planning your IIoT solution. We'll certainly be sending this out in a follow-up email to all our participants here today. As I mentioned before, there's more webinar, more web content stuff going on. If you're a hands-on person and wants to get in and start tinkering around with this stuff and setting up, especially with the Siemens PLCs, you can check out this live broadcast we did actually just yesterday, live TIA demo, and this unpacks in much greater detail the MQTT protocol and what's actually going on connecting these devices to the cloud. This paired with a live active sample of connecting a portal application to an Azure-based cloud solution. So please check that out if you want to get into the more technical details and get more hands-on with this particular content. And you just can't get enough of the dulcet tones of my great voice. I hosted that webinar as well with another engineer at DMC. So please check that out. As well as if you walk the DIY road a little bit more, something we introduced today, the Siemens LMQTT library. This is something that can help your programmers or you yourself jumpstart the development if you are interested in starting to connect your devices to cloud-based applications. The LMQTT library is available and ready to help jumpstart this need. And all of that being said, I hope that wherever you are, however you're listening, you are safe, you are healthy, you are contending with the current state of the world as best as you can. And I really do appreciate you taking the hour out of your day to spend some time with me and the DMC moderators. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. My contact information is here should you have any questions whatsoever. And certainly I'd turn over to the moderators here to see if we have any open questions in the chat. So we will be sticking around for a few minutes to do some Q&A in the chat session. Otherwise, if there's no questions, I wish you all a safe and happy, healthy weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And we do have a few questions for you. The first one that I've got, I've heard about other communications methods in IIoT like Sparkplug project. Is there support for Sparkplug?
That's a great question. So to set up very quickly, Sparkplug is a expansion of the MQTT protocol. There's a Sparkplug open source community kind of going on right now, and this is specifically designed for SCADA style industrial applications. I'm not aware of right now any out of the box solutions for Sparkplug that have been purpose built or developed within PLC technologies, but building on top of like the MQTT building blocks that we have right now, I would hope that it would be a natural expansion of the type of technology that we're deploying today.
Thank you, Patrick. And we do have another one too. Does DMC have a preferred cloud provider for high mix data types?
For high mix data types, I'm going to have to make an assumption about what you would mean by the mix. I'm assuming it would be something like high speed time series data with maybe low speed event data, or just very dissimilar rates or sizes of data. In terms of cloud provider, I would say no. I would say the leading cloud platforms that are out there, Azure, AWS, or otherwise, have Google Cloud certainly. They have different platform service offerings that are tailored to different types of data. We definitely do look at application requirements and deploy architectures that require a hybrid data model, meaning sometimes we use a SQL database, for example, for certain types of relational data, whereas other times we will deploy a NoSQL solution or a blob storage-based solution if the size and shape of the data mandates a significant different performance requirement or different relational structure.
And one last question for you, Patrick. What are your thoughts on AMQP?
AMQP is a asynchronous message queuing protocol. It's very popular in the web world. That's absolutely common practice, especially as we see more of these microservice type applications being deployed, and how the services speak to one another happens over AMQP. Most of the types of communication brokers that support MQTT also directly support AMQP. So what you'll see a lot of times is the edge devices, the embedded devices, PLCs, whatever it is, connecting to an MQTT broker, and then their information actually being relayed to software services over AMQP. I think it's a great design pattern. It's structured a little bit differently than MQTT, just ever so slightly. And because of the market lead MQTT has in terms of the edge devices themselves, I would not see a situation where we'd go ahead and implement a library for PLCs for AMQP, just because, again, using MQTT and using the brokerage services that are available, they're automatically doing that translation for us. So I think AMQP is great. I don't see a situation or necessarily a call to action to get industrial devices directly connected to AMQP.
Thank you, Patrick, so much for answering all of our questions. I know there's probably a few more in there, but that's wraps up our hour.
That's great. Again, to all those listening and still signed on, thank you so much for your time and attention today. And certainly if we didn't get to any questions, we'll review the chat. We'll be sending a follow-up thank you email with all the links you saw here today. And feel free to reach out and get in touch. We are more than happy to discuss more specifics with your applications anytime that you wish. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.